Morant with a running start. Elevates. Oh, he dunks. Oh, my goodness.
Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is good. Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining.
Conley now with three. Count it. A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance.
Adams going long. Morant. He hit it. John Morant, insanity.
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. The Grizzlies have won 7 straight games. They stay tied with the Nuggets for first in the West. They still have the best home record in the NBA, tied with the Nuggets. They beat the Spurs 121-113. Not the most convincing win you would ever dream up. Ja Morant was out for this game as well. A little bit of a surprise there for me personally. I guess I just assumed it was a night off situation when Ja missed the first half of the back-to-back, but he doesn't play in the second half of the back-to-back. Never fear, Tyus Jones is here. Tyus scored 24 points, raising his scoring average for the season to 21.1 points when he is the starter. I'll repeat the stat because I still find it remarkable. Coming into the previous season, Tyus Jones had one 20-point game in his entire career. His career high was 20. He'd done it one time. And now you see him consistently being a high scorer when asked to do so. He led the Grizzlies in points. He led the Grizzlies in field goal attempts. He got to play against his younger brother. Just a lot of good stuff for Tyus Jones there. The Grizzlies defeated the Spurs for the 8th straight time. And that is the Grizzlies' longest active win streak over any other team. The Spurs, of course, beat the Grizzlies 21 straight times back starting in 1997 when the team was in Vancouver. So still a little bit of ways to make up that debt. The Grizzlies had a big first half in this one. Desmond Bane played. This was Desmond Bane's first back-to-back that he's played in both games this season. So hopefully the Grizzlies getting a little bit healthier. With Jaren now playing back-to-backs, with Desmond Bane now available to play back-to-backs. Of course, no Ja. Hopefully he gets healthy soon. Brandon Clark missed yet another game. Taylor Jenkins said before the game that he's going to be out for probably another week or so as he deals with that sore hip. Kind of a similar type of thing, at least from this outsider perspective, that he's dealt with a lot in his career, which is just a lot of soreness, a lot of joint soreness that has kept him out of games before. Not acute injuries where he falls and gets hurt, just some stuff where all of a sudden he pops up on the injury report, misses some games. It seems to plague Brandon. But the Grizzlies do enough to get that 7th straight win. That's all that really matters. Hey, no big deal if they aren't really covering in these games. They have weak second halves has been the pattern recently in the win streak. The flip side of that is they are smoking teams in the first half. The Grizzlies scored 72 points in the first half against the Spurs. That is their 5th 70-point first half of the season. They've won every game this year when they score at least 70 in the first half. Last season, they had 12 games where they had 70 points or more in the first half. They went 11-1 in those games. But what's happened recently is they've trailed off greatly, fallen off a cliff, honestly, in the second halves where the offense really abandons the team. They struggle to score in this one in the second half. The Spurs took a lead in the fourth quarter. They had a 22-5 run that lasted over the end of the third quarter, the start of the fourth quarter, to take a lead. But the Grizzlies calmly got the lead back. You had Bane making some good plays, Jaren Jackson Jr., Tyus Jones, Dylan Brooks made some big shots. Dylan had a nice steal that led to a Bane 3 that put the Grizzlies back up by 7. I think Jaren put it away with a three-pointer. Jaren had, ho-hum, 5 more block shots. Jaren Jackson Jr., who has got to be the leading candidate for Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA, had 5 more blocks, including 2 on one amazing play where he blocked Jakob Poeltl's layup attempt. He spiked it into the rim. Then Jeremy Sochan grabs it, thinks he can quick shoot a layup. Nope. Jaren, obviously we know, he's averaging the most blocks per game in the NBA, but hasn't played enough games to qualify for the leaderboard. Well, Jaren is now 3rd in total blocks in the NBA, tied with Miles Turner, and that's despite playing 11 fewer games than Miles Turner. He gave the entire NBA a 14-game head start on block shots, and he's already up to 3rd. Jaren also made 2 3-pointers. This was his 3rd 5-block, 2-made 3-pointer game of the season. The only player with more this year is Brook Lopez. Jaren has 9 career games with at least 5 blocks and 2 made 3-pointers. That is tied for the 6th most such games in NBA history. He's tied with Andre Karolinko with 9 career games of at least 5 blocks and 2 made threes. The only players in NBA history to have more, it's Raef LaFrentz, Anthony Davis, Kristaps Porzingis, Miles Turner, and Brook Lopez. Jaren does have the most 5-block games in the NBA this season. He now has 20 5-block games in his career. That's 1 behind Marc Gasol and 6 behind Pau Gasol for the most in Grizzlies franchise history. He has 11 straight games with multiple blocks. That's a current streak, longest streak in the NBA this season. That is the most games in a row with multiple blocks in Grizzlies franchise history, breaking a record he tied with Pau Gasol. Pau did it in 2007. Oh, by the way, he also scored 16 points. 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 5 blocks for Jaren, who is just playing great right now. Jaren actually has a streak of 6 straight games of getting at least 3 blocks. That's the longest streak in his career. Right now, Nick Claxton for the Nets also has a 6-game streak that he's working on of at least 3 blocks in each game. Jaren, in the past 6 games where he has this streak of having at least 3 blocks, is averaging 19 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, 4.2 blocks per game, 1.2 steals per game, all in 29 minutes of playing time. Also, he's making 43.5% of his three-pointers. These numbers are absurd. Jaren fulfilling that promise, that potential, and looking like an all-star. Now, will he be an all-star this year? I doubt it. We did the exercise on Fast Break Breakfast on an episode that also came out today on Tuesday, January 10th, where we named our all-star reserves based on who's likely going to be the starters. And it's going to be very, very tough to Jaren Jackson Jr. to make the all-star team, even if we think he's better than a lot of the guys he's competing with. The Western Conference all-star spots are going to be highly competitive, and the way it broke down for us on that episode is it basically boiled down to there was 1 spot available for Jaren and also Domantas Sabonis and Lauri Markkanen and Anthony Edwards and anybody else you think is fringe, like CJ McCollum or Chris Paul or Aaron Gordon or Jeremy Grant or Desmond Bane. Like, there are so many all-stars that are absolutely in. There are locks, like Ja's a lock, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's a lock, Paul George is a lock. And when you go down the list, it was just like, all right, Devin Booker's in, Damian Lillard's in. Now, am I going to pick Sabonis or Markkanen or Jaren or Anthony Edwards? And it's tough. As a Grizzlies fan, I'm not certain that Jaren is more deserving than Sabonis, so I don't think nationally he's going to get there. Of course, the Grizzlies can still make an impression if they keep winning basketball games. Like Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane averages 22 points per game. The Grizzlies are 15-5 when Desmond Bane plays. Do you weigh in how good a guy is if he hasn't been available for that many games? Like Jeremy Grant's played in 37 games. Jaren's only played in 24, but they have the same number of wins. Both players have won 17 times. That stuff doesn't normally matter. It's normally about volume for all-star selections. I mean, maybe the coaches will pick Jaren because historically they've rewarded teams that are winning. And right now, with the Grizzlies winning a bunch of their games, and if they stay at the top of the conference, maybe he will get recognized. But the most important thing is Jaren's looking awesome. And, Desmond Bane was no slouch himself this game. Wasn't his best one, but for the first one on the second night of a back-to-back, I think we will take it. He had 15 points, 4 assists. He did turn the ball over 4 times. He made 3 three-pointers. That's great to see. The three-point volume and accuracy seems to be returning a little bit. Dylan Brooks had a nice game with 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. He was battling foul trouble. Steven Adams, okay, 13 points, 15 rebounds, 4 assists. That's all good, but the Spurs went to hack Adams in this one, and it was pretty effective. Steven Adams only made 3 out of 11 free throw attempts. The Grizzlies, because of that, or largely because of that, only made 57% of their free throws, 20 of 35 from the line. Definitely one of those reasons this wasn't the most comfortable game. Like Brooks was 4 for 6, Jackson was 4 for 6, Bane missed his only free throw. That is not good. The Grizzlies securing themselves as by far the worst free throw shooting team in the NBA. Because Bane played in this one, because he was back and available, the cascading effect to the rotation was David Roddy got pushed out of the rotation. David Roddy, who I thought had a couple of very, very nice games in a row, he was the odd man out. Xavier Tillman, who'd also been playing very, very well recently and got the start in the previous game, he stayed in the lineup, so they used 2 bigs off the bench, Aldama and Tillman. The rest of the bench players, it was Kennedy Chandler, John Conchar, and Zaire Williams. So Roddy, with a straight-up did not play coach's decision. The good news is Zaire continued the fine form he showed in that Orlando game. He had double digits again with 11 points, got 5 rebounds, made 4 out of his 9 field goal attempts. Zaire has now made a three-pointer in 7 straight games. That is the longest streak of Zaire's career. So good job there. He's only got 218 games to go to catch Steph Curry for the greatest three-point streak of all time. Also a note about Desmond Bane's 3 made three-pointers. He moved into 7th place in Grizzlies franchise history for the most made three-pointers, breaking a tie that he had with Shane Battier. A few other notes here. Santi Aldama, 5 for 5 off the bench. And today is Santi's birthday. So happy birthday to Santi Aldama. He had 13 points against the Spurs, 2 steals, made all of his field goal attempts and all of his free throw attempts. Good job there. Kudos to you. Kennedy Chandler as the backup point guard. I'm liking what I'm seeing from Kennedy. A lot of good activity. The shooting is always going to be the question mark, so room for improvement there. But I thought Kennedy Chandler in the last 2 games has looked pretty solid. He's definitely looked like he belonged, at least. I mean, the Spurs, they are, let's be honest, they're one of the worst teams in the NBA. They also didn't have Keldon Johnson. They didn't have Devin Vassell. So, like I said, wasn't the most convincing win you ever saw, but as I like to say, they took care of business. They did what they had to do, and they win the game, while obviously being shorthanded themselves with no John Morant, no Brandon Clark. The Grizzlies got over their magic arbitrary cutoff of 120 points. Updating the stats, they're now 17-1 this season when they score at least 120 points as a team. Last season, they were 30-0. Even if you lower that number, like say, all right, maybe not 120 points, let's take it down to 110 points. The Grizzlies, when they score at least 110 points this season, they're 25-2. They score under 110, they're 2-11. So basically, if the Grizzlies can just have an average offensive game, they win. And they win at an incredible rate. It helps when you have one of the best defenses in the NBA, even if the last two games haven't really been a defensive stalwart exhibition outside of Jaren's spectacular block numbers. Last season, by the way, if they scored 110 points or more, they were 48-9. They were 8-17 if they scored under 110 points. The Grizzlies now have the second best record through 40 games in franchise history, trailing only the 2014-2015 season. And do you guys remember how Ja Morant earlier this year passed Tyus Jones to be 21st in franchise history in steals? Well, Tyus is back ahead, and he's ahead by 11 now. So that back and forth hasn't really been a back and forth. It was mainly just a Tyus overtook it again and is now building a lead. Tyus with 3 more steals in the game against the Spurs. The Grizzlies are back at it on Wednesday night against the Spurs. Let's make it 9 straight against the Spurs. Let's make it 8 straight wins overall. If not, honestly, we'll all be very, very disappointed. That'll be a pretty huge letdown. This little week of games has been very easy games, and hopefully everyone can get right, get healthy, and continue the chase for the overall number 1 seed. Let's get Coach Jenkins that spot as one of the 2 All-Star Game coaches, the representative from the Western Conference. And again, the more wins you get, the better chance Jaren Jackson Jr. has of making the All-Star Game. After the home game on Wednesday, they go on the road to play at the Pacers, team that's playing pretty well. And then, of course, there's the MLK Day game on Monday in Memphis against the Phoenix Suns. Should be a great event. Do not miss that and all the associated activities that are occurring if you are anywhere near Memphis. Anyways, 7 straight wins for the Grizzlies. I do not take it for granted. A reminder, in the 7 years of grit and grind Grizzlies, where they made the playoffs for 7 straight seasons from 2010 to 2017, the Grizzlies had 5 total win streaks of at least 7 games. They now have 6 individual win streaks of at least 7 games or more in the Ja Morant, Taylor Jenkins era. And once again, reminding you how good things are now. This is my favorite blowout stat from last year's episodes. I'm now updating it for this season. In those 7 years of making the playoffs with the core 4, the Grizzlies had 11 total blowout wins by 25 points or more. Since the start of last season, the Grizzlies have 20 victories of 25 points or more. That is absurd. I mean, the Grizzlies have 27, just 20-point wins since the start of last year, including the playoffs. In the 7 years of grit and grind, they had 29 total. So things are pretty fun right now. It is a very good time to be a Memphis Grizzlies fan. Anyways, I appreciate you listening to these episodes. Please do me the favor of subscribing to the YouTube channel. Tell others about the show. Anyways, hope you're having a great day. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz!